next time?
Yes.
I mean, I know you're new as chair, so.
Yeah, so I've never actually paid attention to the opening meeting.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Camden Planning Board meeting for Thursday, February 5th. My name's Jeremy Martin. I'm the Planning and Development Director for the town. And we have 4 planning board members here today. Lucia DeCordre as the chair, Kate McGrath, Tia Anderson, and Peter Burke, who is a alternate, but he's going to act as a voting member today if we have to take any votes, which I'm hoping we do, just to schedule, schedule a hearing date, public hearing dates on a couple of things that we're going to talk about tonight. That's all I have for now, and then we'll jump into some things later. But I'll turn it over to Lucia. And Lucia, I guess now is the time for public comment on non-agenda items.
Yeah, so just asking if the public has any comments on non-agenda items, and seeing that there are no members of the public here, I think we close that portion of the meeting.
Did you want to bring anything up? We talked earlier.
Yeah, absolutely, if this is the right time.
Now's the time.
So one of the things that I'd like to see Camden move forward with the possibility of at least explore, thank you, the possibility of community benefits. And as developments come in, many other towns and cities across the U.S. use what are called community benefits. And it's basically if a site plan or someone is asking for more than what is given by right or allowed by right on their property, they contribute some community benefits to the town. And they're in some places they're called impact fees, and those are based basically on the impacts that are created. Whether they're for the fire department or civil engineering or other, contributions. But there are also community benefits, which might mean improvements to a park or to monies set aside for public good, etc. And a lot of communities do request that, and it's based basically on the valuation of a particular development in some form, whatever is agreed, and that is contributed to the town. And it's not really a quid pro quo, but it is the development or the applicant's sort of contribution to the town, given that they're going to be developing something or putting something there that will have some sort of impacts. Either the people that will be living there or using that will be using other amenities of the town, etc. So I would love for us to explore that sort of thing and what the legalities of that are in Maine, and maybe staff can help look at some examples or some, where that is happening right now in Maine.
Okay, that sounds good. I can do that. Shanley and I will dig in a little bit. I think I mentioned maybe before impact fees. The state is looking at impact fees again. And this is on the housing side, which is driving them to look at it again, because the state legislature's alleging that impact fees are limiting housing developments because of the additional costs. And I think it's much ado about nothing. I think generally impact fees, and these are a little different than some of the community benefit fees that you're talking about, or community benefits that you're talking about, impact fees for sewer improvements or sidewalk improvements or something in that area of the development. So the state legislature is kind of not too keen on impact fees right now, and they are looking at ways to kind of gut the impact fee language that's in state law for municipalities. That's a huge thing, I will say, for a lot of towns, especially impact fees like South Portland uses them. Bangor uses them. A lot of towns use them, but Bangor and South Portland in particular use them to address MS4, their MS4 communities, which is a standard for EPA on managing stormwater throughout the town. So in like the Bangor Mall area, the South Portland Mall area, where there's degraded water quality in like the Long Creek, which runs down through South Portland, and the Pajajawak Stream, which is in Bangor, severely impaired watersheds. It's all the impervious surface over time that's been developed that has impaired these watersheds. And so there's an impact fee that goes into a fund in both those communities that goes to offset work being done to improve water quality, in the watershed. So that's how they're used. It's one example of how they're used in the state. And Shenley and I will dive into it more for you all and then report back. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, and just to add to that, when we were having the meeting with the select board and the planning board, I think that did come up in the meeting. And I remember, I believe it was Chriso, select board member Chriso, that mentioned that they can also be in-kind things, whether, there's many ways to work with an
Yeah.
applicant and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, we will look into that and report back to you folks.
Great.
Sound good?
Great.
And your next item, and if you want to take over, you can. Again, it's really just to approve the minutes from those
Yeah.
4 meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. So has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
I know you
past
all
few
weren't
meetings?
here for these meetings, so what I suggested to Lucia previously is that you just accept them.
Yeah.
Rather than formally approve them. So our minutes are done based on, so Maddie, who's in our office, she goes through the notes that Shenley takes. Shenley takes a lot of the great notes, but she also reviews the video, which is recorded. And then she does very basic minutes. So these are not minutes like years ago. Minutes would be like verbatim, everything anyone said. It's not how this is done anymore. It's really just action items. So I understand the board's not been here for these. So if someone can make a motion that they are accepted just for the purpose of acknowledging that they're accepted, not formally approved, but accepted, and then we can move forward.
And I did have a good look through them, and I didn't find anything, that was untoward or missing that I remember. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from January 16th, 2025, August 21st, 2025, November 20th, 2025, and December 18th, 2025.
Okay, and to accept the minute.
To accept the minutes, yes.
A second?
Second.
Um,
And you take a vote.
Yes. Do we want to vote? Yeah.
4-0. Thank you. Appreciate it. Maybe I'll jump right in then, Lucia. The next thing we have is, it says staff presentation. I guess it's more of just a communication and talk to you about, Shenley sent you a lot of information about the planning board and process that we'd use and things that the board does. But I wanted to just maybe circle back and just like touch base what staff does and what the board does. My staff, planning development staff, there's myself, the director, Shenley, town planner, Clint Beveridge, the code officer, and then Madeline Hicks, who's our administrative assistant. Clint and Shenley review every permit application that comes into our office. Shenley reviews them on like the outside stuff, the exterior, looking at setbacks, looking at, buffers and lot coverages and things like that. Clint is looking more deeply at the actual building application and the building aspect of it. That's how we operate. And then when the permit's ready to be issued, we issued the permit. There are certain projects that require the planning board to review them before we issue permits, or the zoning board of appeals to approve them. And your statutory authority for things comes from state law. There's the Growth Management Act, and there's also subdivision law, which is in there in state law. And that authorizes the municipal planning boards to review subdivisions. And the Growth Management Act authorizes the planning board to really kind of do comp planning. And that's what like the master comp plan is. That's long-range planning for the town. The short-term planning is more of this stuff that we're doing, or you will be doing more of. You'll be seeing, I think, some applications for site plan and subdivision coming soon. So that's on like the short range planning side of things. The charter also speaks to the town charter also speaks to the planning board's responsibilities for growth planning and growth management. So I think that's important. And then we have the comp plan. Yeah. Which is the basis for everything. And that was adopted in 2017. And I think we've got it until 2020. Do you remember? 2030, right? We're good with ours until 2030. So we are going to have to start doing it, like getting to that point to look at our comp plan again. Comp plans they're changing from what they were years ago. There used to be exactly what this is, which is just a very thick document that just is a lot of words and a lot of charts and graphs and data. Sometimes it's really not user friendly. It's not useful to for people to pick up and this is what the plan is for the future for the Camden. And a lot of communities are going to a more, I don't want to say web-based, but a more interactive type comp plan. And I think I can show and provide you some examples of those in the future. But we are going to be starting to work on that. I have been setting aside $5,000 every year for the last, 5 years, getting ready to work on the comp plan. And I think at some point we'll probably have to hire a firm to help us with that. So that's why I've been setting that money aside every year. That's something.
Jeremy, can I just ask about the comp plan? When you all, the last time you did it, and how do you envision doing, is it a series of workshops? Do you all look at it first? Do you, and draft something, or do you start at the beginning with public input and, looking at what actually has to be revised, what doesn't have to be?
Yeah. I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, this was really a planning board and a comp plan kind of committee that did it the last time. And I think it's important for it to be an open process, very open in the public, and lots of dialogue with the community and beyond just the planning board. I think it's a bigger group of people that are involved in it. Whether or not there's a formal comp plan committee made up, I don't know how that's going to play out yet.
Well, I think you have to have that. The board has to
ahead.
appoint,
Yeah.
I think, a committee
They do. I was just,
with stakeholders.
yeah, I just didn't know if it was going to be like the planning board was going to be
Right,
that,
right.
the committee, or is it going to be the planning board plus some other people? And likely it would be that, would be my guess. And we'll get into that probably next winter, I think, really start maybe positioning to redo our comp plan. And I think Shenley and I, in the meantime, we'll go through it and identify certain things that are pretty much don't need to change, but may need to be formatted differently or put out there differently. Keep in mind too, that the state is constantly changing these regulations and these laws on growth management. And so I also don't want to, and this has been frustrating for a lot of communities lately in the last couple of years that are deep into the comp plan process, redoing their comp plans, and the legislature is tweaking the rules and what you have to provide and the kind of data you have to include. So it really has been complicated and hard for some communities. So I'd like to wait until I think the legislature is probably getting to a place where they're maybe have had enough of dealing with comp plan, subdivision, and housing, I hope, because it's a constant. I don't think anyone knows what's coming and so I think people are getting tired of that, or it's getting old, I think. Not that those conversations aren't important, but when we change something because the legislature says you got to change housing rules, regulations, we change it this year, and then next year they come back and say, oh, you got to do something different, and then we change it again, and then the next year they come back and say there's 3 more bills that tweak things again. It's a constant change, and every time they do that, it costs money, and that's what we're trying to say to the legislature. We have to hold hearings, we have to have staff meetings. I mean, when we did LD 2003, I think we accounted for $30,000 or so, 39,000 maybe of time spent, lawyers, hearings, staff time, your time. That's a significant amount of money especially for a small municipality to handle, and even smaller ones than us, you know? So I'll leave that there. The reviews that the planning board does, you do really outside of comp planning stuff, you are looking at site plan applications and site plan applications. There's applicability section in the back of the code, and it's Article 12, and it just kind of details what projects require your approval. And then outside of that, there's subdivisions. That's a separate code in our code book. It's subdivision. And those are anytime someone is going to, for sale or lease, 3 lots or 3 units or more and within a 5-year period is a subdivision. The legislatures tweak that so that 3 is changed, but we haven't changed our code yet because we have until July of next year, I believe, because there's a fixed bill for 1829, LD 1829. There's a fixed bill that the legislature is working right now. There's a hearing on it next Tuesday, which will push us all back until July of 27, thankfully. And then there's the Zoning Board of Appeals. Tia's been on the zoning board. The Zoning Board of Appeals they're involved somewhat in things you folks do. Zoning Board looks at variances, and there's a wide number of different variances. Variances are generally if someone wants to do something and the setback or regulation says you can't do it, someone can apply for a variance. Variances used to be given out like candy back years ago, decades ago, but the law court has really kind of refined when a variance can be issued. There's some criteria, 4 or 5 criteria, but generally you have to prove that the reason for the variance is not something that you caused or a prior owner, or that you can't have a reasonable economic return on the property without the variance being granted. There's some other
Yeah, that's the hardest, I
handful
think,
of
to
it.
meet that one.
There's a handful of other criteria, but those are the gist of them. And what makes it hard is the legislature or the law court. In one case, it was a property zoned, and I don't remember what case this was, but a property was zoned resource protection, which means you can't build a house on it. You can't really do anything with it. You could harvest crops on it. You could, recreate and things like that. And someone took that to the state law court and said, this is real. This is I don't have any reasonable economic return on my property. I can't even do anything with it. And the law court said, well, actually you can. You can go enjoy it. You can go sit down on it. You can enjoy nature. You can enjoy that property that's resource protected. And they denied it. So that person went all the way from, through the appeals court or appeals board, through the courts, all the way up to the law court. And the law court says, of course, there's a reasonable economic return. People, you can go visit it. You can go sit there. So that standard is really hard to meet. And I think that was the intent. And so I think in that case, I think they said that because of that, there should only be like a handful of variances granted statewide every year. That's why people don't get those variances anymore. And that's that. And then there's appeals. And then appeal is something where, if the code officer makes a decision, or Chinley and I make a decision, we're also code officials. So if someone is, like we're dealing with one right now on what street level is in our definitions, very complicated definition. And I read it. You read words for what they say, right? Words are words and they have meanings, and they're set up in a paragraph and sentences the way they are for a reason. And if you look at street level, this case, it's very clear. I totally understand what the person is saying, and I get it, and I appreciate where they're coming from. And does it make sense? Yes. However, words have meaning and words are situated in a paragraph and in sentences the way they are for a reason. And so I said, yeah, I can't, like, we have to call this street level, and this kills their project. They're like, but it doesn't make sense. I'm like, I know, but the words say what they say. And it says it's not street level, or it says it is street level, which means you can't do your residential project there. So I said, what are their options? And they asked me what the options are. And I said, well, you can go for an appeal. You can appeal what we're saying. In appeals today, years ago, it was like a permit had to be approved or denied, and then you could appeal a permit. Now appeals, based on what has happened through the courts, if we just make a verbal decision and we say to someone, no, that doesn't work, and they actually haven't formally, years ago, you'd have to like tell someone, apply for the permit, we'll deny it, and then yada, 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 go through the process. Now, even just a verbal doesn't work, that's appealable. So I said, you can apply for an appeal, or we can go through a process and go for a zone map amendment, which is the right thing to do. Because you can't, if the Board of Appeals is reading word for word, like I'm reading word for word, they'll agree with Shenley and I, because the words have meaning and the words say what they say. Even though it might not make sense, at one point it made sense to draft it the way it did. So they totally understood, and they're not applying for an appeal. They're going through a process to try to do a zoning map amendment, which is the way to do things. And then the zoning board does special exceptions too. Special exceptions are, a lot of communities call them conditional uses. They review a project for, let's see, what a special exception we did was the antique shop, right? There's uses that are allowed. If you go through the permitted uses section of each zoning district, things are permitted, and then things are permitted as special exceptions. And these are, like turning an office building, or there's a home, residentially looking home. It was, I think, an office years ago, and they wanted to go to retail on the inside. They wanted to do a retail antique shop. The antique shop, yep, you can do it, but it's a special exception. So you go to the zoning board and you have to meet some standards, and they lay out standards, traffic and hours of business. And I mean, there can be a whole host of standards in there. And then the zoning board hears it, and that's a special exception, and they grant that. That sometimes those don't even have to go to the planning board. Like that one didn't have to go to the planning board because it was already commercial before. It's just changing from like an office use to a retail use. So that's a special exception. And then the zoning board also hears changes to nonconformities. And those are nonconformities in the shoreland zone and nonconformities elsewhere. One that I was thinking about nonconformities elsewhere was the old over on, what is it, Molyneux and 105 on the corner. The builder was back there years ago. Remember who built all these subdivisions around, like Pleasant Ridge? Yes, thank you. Where Sonny Goodman had his shop up on Molyneux and 105. I think you were on the board when we did that one. That was a change of use. It was a nonconformity, but they wanted to change to another use. And so there's a process to go through, and that's what they did there. And then shoreland zone projects too. If someone wants to do an expansion, put a foundation underneath a camp, those kinds of things have to go to the zoning board of appeals, and you have to prove a whole host of things. Like you can't move it back for this reason or that reason. There's a whole host of things. So that's other things that the zoning board of appeals reviews. That's all I can think of right now. I think that covers that pretty well. Anyone, any questions or thoughts on any of that stuff? I know I'm talking fast probably, but and as always, if you have any questions reading through your stuff or whenever, or not reading through your stuff about what we do and why, feel free to reach out to me. And the other thing you guys do are zoning amendments, and those are text amendments, which would be like some of the things that we're going to talk about here right now, or a map amendment, which is something like I just mentioned. There's a property, again, up the hill, wants to do something and it doesn't work, but it would work if it was in a different zone. The other zone adjacent to it is village. This one, they want to go to village likely. So that's, those are amendments, text amendments. And we did these for like the short-term rentals. We did these for piers and structures in the harbor. Those were all text amendments that show up in the actual, the code itself, not in a map. And so I have proposed, and we had talked a little bit before, I think really at the joint meeting with the select board, of some things that need to work on, things that we need to address in our code and in our world when Shenley, Clint, and I are reviewing projects, which are oftentimes very complex reviews. They can be at times. And so I'm trying to create a process where planning board, zoning board, and staff have better information so that we can thoroughly review projects where we're actually getting real information. And I'm not poo-pooing people that might want to get a permit and they draw a site plan or a plot plan by hand. They just draw it and they say, here's my lot. I'm going to put the house right here. And then they draw a line that says 40 feet this way, 30 feet setback, 20-foot setback, and we're good, right? Sometimes that works, right? Sometimes that works because their lot's big enough and you know that they're not going to blow setbacks. You know they're going to meet all the lot coverage standards. Other times, however, it's really, really hard to verify what the information they're providing us is true and accurate. And it's not on the town to go prove them wrong. Like I can't go, so what I'm trying to do is get better information. And these are primarily for projects that go to the zoning board, planning board, because nothing in here in our code says currently a project that's coming to the planning board other than subdivision. Nothing in here says that a plan that's submitted to the planning board for approval has to be a surveyed plan or a stamped plan or designed by a design professional. And we need that. We need that. I can tell you a lot of reasons why we need it. But it's really so that we are, we have to like reasonably prove that someone is meeting the standards and they have to prove it to us and then we have to check it, right? So I'm proposing, these are some staff proposed amendments, and amendments can be initiated by staff or the select board or the planning board can initiate some amendments that if you'd like, or they can be initiated by a property owner as well. The zoning amendment that we had not too long ago, Chip Late, for his property up on Belfast Road. I think everyone knows where Chip's, where the solar farm, Midtown Solar Farm is. He's got the kind of the commercial industrial warehouse space up there. He wanted to be able to add to that his big steel building. He wanted to do an addition on it. He hasn't done it yet, but he wanted to, and the code prevented him from doing that. So he brought forward an amendment. It was not something that like those kind of amendments are something we shouldn't initiate ourselves. That's something like that applicant really should do. And he brought that forward, went through the process. We did, planning board held a hearing, went to the select board had a hearing, select board put it on the warrant article, went to the voters approved it. That's a case for that. The harbor changes or the changes for piers and things like that, that was initiated by staff. However, that one was driven by the moratorium that the town kept adopting and kept continuing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So we did initiated some amendments on our own to do that. That's the case with these amendments. So I'm proposing, and what I'd like to get tonight out of this is to schedule, at the end of this, to schedule public hearings on these. So that we can actually formally post it in the newspaper, post it online, post it in the building, and then have a hearing on these. And then we have to have like 13-day notice in the paper, and then I think it's 7-day notice or 6-day notice, and then we hold the hearing. And then the hope is to get these to voters in June. In order to get things to voters in June, we have the select board, I think the latest date for their public hearing is March 17th for things to get on the June ballot. So we're kind of moving quickly. And I don't want to bring something, and I think we've talked about this previously, like some of the resource protect or the stream protection things that we were talking about previously. Those are much bigger than doing quickly. It's much more impactful on people's private property. I want people to understand what these implications are if we're going to change streams that have no real protection now. If we're going to add some stream protection language in there, I want people that are impacted by those to understand what we're doing and it to be open and out there so I've kind of scaled back some of this stuff and just going with these more administrative ones. So I'm proposing to amend Chapter 290, and I can this is all in your agenda packet if you want to follow through, to amend Article 290, or Chapter 290, Article 5, to require applicants for certain projects in the shoreline zone to submit plans prepared by licensed design professionals, including licensed engineers, architects, and surveyors, to enable staff to completely enforce requirements of the state's mandatory Shoreline Zoning Act. That's our hope. So in this currently Article 5 administrative and enforcement has a 290 5.5. It's currently how I do these, just so you know, and tell me if any of you are colorblind. I had a coworker up in Bangor, the city attorney was colorblind, and I would do these things all in different colors. And he was like, no, I can't. So tell me if you are, but right now, blue is what's proposed. If there's any red, the red would be deletions and they would be crossed out as well. So blue is what's proposed. Black is what is currently in the code. So 295.5 currently says photographic record in shoreland overlay zone. That requires people to take pictures of their project afterward. I'm proposing to change that 295.5 to say photographic record and other required submittals. And B would be the other required submittal. And what I'm proposing is, what staff's proposing is additional information required. The Planning and Development Director may require in writing additional information from applicants for a permit for any development within the shoreland zone where such information is reasonably necessary and required to evaluate and verify compliance with this chapter and those requirements of 38 MRSA as may be amended from time to time. 38 MRSA is that's where shoreline zoning fits in state law, and they have the mandatory Shoreline Zoning Act. We have to be exactly what they are or stricter. Such required information shall be prepared, stamped, and submitted by a licensed design professional. The required information may include, but not be limited to, site plan details, slope and drainage data, ground coverage, setbacks, vegetation, shoreline stabilization, and other information affecting public health, safety, and welfare. That's what I'm proposing. One thing I would add, I'm probably going to want to add in here the Planning and Development Director or their designee may require. That's used elsewhere in here, and I prefer that. And so that would be like Clint or Shenley in their review. And we have to put that in writing to them. So if maybe I'm not here or I'm doing different things, Shenley or Clint can put that in writing to them and say, hey, per this section of the code, you guys got to get a surveyor or an engineer involved. This is important because, if you look at lots on the lake, on Maguntacook, even on Hosmer too, I mean, they're all small. They're generally small lots. And as Tia knows, she's reviewed a number of these. And thankfully, most of the ones that we're getting are stamped by an engineer. But, when we look at ground coverage in the shoreline zone is anything that's not vegetated other than natural ledge. So if you have natural ledge, that doesn't get counted into a ground coverage calculation. But there's a calculation, I think it's 20% off the top of my head, 20 in the shoreline zone of your lot can be covered with anything that's not vegetated. So that's your driveway, that's your your drip edge on your house that might be, that you might have stone there. It could be your patio. It could be the walkway from your driveway to your house. It's the deck. It's the garage. It's a stone wall that you want. That's even ground coverage. And so calculating those or asking a homeowner or property owner to, or contractor for that matter, to provide that information, because if they're proposing something, we need to know where they are currently, what that ground coverage is, and what the proposed is going to be. And without getting that information, it's real information. It's really, really hard to do reviews. And you guys in the ZBA don't get a lot of these projects often. We get them all the time. And these, because they're allowed by right. And so sometimes we're, like I was dealing with one on a Harbor Road, and trying to like figure out what the lot coverage is. And they're like, well, we'll just shrink down the driveway. Like we'll shrink down the width of the driveway by like 2 feet. I'm like, okay, show it on the plan, right? First, there's like a hand-drawn plan. Show it on the plan first. And then like, is that real? Like, is that real? I don't know. So we need more information from them. It makes sense. Shenley and Clint and I talk about this all the time. And Clint, we went over these with Clint today. He's like, oh man, we need that desperately. I mean, it's just something we need because it's our job to make sure they're compliant. And it doesn't just affect that property owner. It's like that property owner, when they sell it, the new buyer, I mean, it affects everything. Go ahead, Peter. Yeah, so there are things that grandfathered in, and we can't know those until they show up on a plan, right? And they got to show us. So something.
What if they just figure that it's existing, I'm gonna fix it up, or I'm gonna alter it just a little bit, but I'm not gonna change the footprint? Is that grandfathered in?
Things that are grandfathered are only things that are grandfathered are things that are only legally established grandfather. So like it was in place before regulations that required 30% or a setback of 100 feet or 75 on the ocean. If there's a camp that's down, within that setback, yeah, that's grandfathered, right? But if someone over time, because we have plans and we have aerial photography, people don't sometimes know we have aerial photography that goes back lots of years and lots of decades, so we can see. But if that house is there and the garage is there and the driveway comes down, but there was never any like paver walkway from your driveway to the house, right? And now all of a sudden it's there, or someone built a stone patio out between the house and the lake. And we look at our plans and we don't see any of this on here. We looked at old aerial photos, and now all of a sudden, 2006 appeared this stone patio. If we can prove them, if they can prove to us that it is grandfathered, it is grandfathered. We review our stuff, but we can say that's not grandfathered based on the information we have. And so, yeah, I mean, we deal with grandfathered things all the time. And that's part of it too. Like we need to know information. And on some of these things, that, especially things that go to the ZBA, they're required to register in the Registry of Deeds, the plan that gets approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, right? So it's important to have that be real information. And unfortunately, the only way to get real information is if a professional, is actually going out there and then they stamp a plan. And this is the as-built conditions, this was out there. So that's what we're proposing. Any comments, concerns, or questions on that one? Okay, next one, if we can. This one, all right. This one is amend Chapter 290, Article 12, which is the site plan article, and Article 5, which is administration and enforcement, to require certificates of compliance stamped by a licensed design professional, including a licensed engineer, architect, and land surveyor, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. This would apply to projects that require site plan approval under Chapter 290, Article 12, and for those projects in the shoreline zone that require Zoning Board of Appeals approval, or for projects that trigger the submittal of plans by licensed design professionals. That's that section that I just talked about, right? So this is a case of, we go through all this, we go through a big review, they submit a design. Now in the future, they'll submit a plan by an engineer. We review it. We say, okay, for construction, this is approved. And then, and so what is changing here is on the back side of this page, there'll be E, just so you know. And then I'll just talk about it. So when a project gets approved, and we're talking like some of these projects, if the 20% is the max ground coverage allowed, some of these projects are at like 19.8, 19.9%. And so like, and we're talking sometimes on very small lots. So when you're at 19.9% on a very small lot, it's like this, it's really tight. And we have to ensure that they're built to the approved plans. And we're not surveyors. It's not our job to ensure that the width of that driveway, that, you know, they narrowed it down from 10 feet or 12 feet to 8 feet because they needed to get to 19, or they needed to get below 20. And for Clint to go out and like setbacks, you know, we don't know where the property lines are exactly. Sometimes, you know, there's a pin goes to a pin and then it goes on a bearing this way and then another bearing this way. I mean, so all of these things, setbacks from the water, setbacks from the side, all of these things, in order to get that certificate of compliance or the C of O, we're proposing that they have to get that engineer or surveyor back on the backside of the project and verify that it was done the way it was approved. And that can either be done through a certificate of compliance, which is just a document, a one-sheeter that is stamped by that surveyor or engineer that says, inspected the site on this date per the approved plans. This project was designed in accordance with those plans with these minor modifications. I mean, there's always something always changes on a project, right? There's something always changes. So that's what we're proposing. And that would be to these following two sections, right? E, for projects requiring planning board or zoning board of approval. That's what I just read. That's what we're proposing. I will say one project in particular that we're struggling with now. This went to the planning board a long time ago. I don't even know if you were on the board, Lucia. This was on Mount Batty Street. Were you here when we did that on the corner of the parking lot? Mike Mullins development on the corner of Mount Batty as it go past Coastal Mountain Land Trust, opposite the corner, kitty corner from them. As you go towards Coastal Mountain Land Trust going up Mount Batty, they expanded the parking lot and they're building, it's taking them a long time. They're building a parking lot with a retaining wall, taking a very long time. But on this other side, on the downhill side, that parking setback is 10 feet from a abutting property, right? That's a 10-foot setback. And I know we have a standard in our code that says they have to build per the approved plans. That is factual. But when he gets a C of O for that parking lot and the final C of O that says the project's been built per the approved plan, the neighbor is concerned that they blew the 10-foot setback on that parking, the paved parking. And there's a slope. It's a slight slope, but that 10-foot is from here to here, not going down the slope. It's like 10 foot. And I could probably lay down. I know I'm just standing there, but I could probably lay down, put my head against the edge of the sidewalk, and my feet are probably near the side, near the property line. I'm not 10 feet tall. And so we need something on our side that says that we're not only the ones catching it, but their surveyor, in order to get that C of O, their surveyor is going to come back with a plan that says built per the approved plans. However, in this, they'll show on that as-built that it doesn't meet the 10-foot setback. And then at that point, then we would say, you're not getting your C of O. And oh, by the way, you've got to pull that out and get it to your 10-foot setback. I hate to use an example of something current, but that is factual right now. So that's what we're asking for, are those as-built certificates of compliance for those things. Any questions or thoughts on that?
No questions from me, but I do think that that's a really good idea. I mean, I think it not only protects you, but it protects the neighbors as well.
Yeah. And it protects that owner of that property
Yes.
when they want to go sell it.
That's right.
And then the future buyer.
Yeah.
Because that's the last thing a new buyer wants to find out is, as they're going through closing, they come down and they're like, yeah, this is what we got here. And you're like, oh, see, there's a setback problem. How are you going to handle it? And then everyone's just like, the sale's killed and like, we got to resolve it. So I think it just makes perfect sense to do it this way. And that would apply to, again, all those projects that require, in the shoreline zone, the one we were just talking about, that would require a designer to do the information on the front side. They got to do that on the back side too. And then the next one, this is supplemental information. This is in Article 12. This is the site plan section where you guys review projects and you have standards. In the subdivision section, and also when we did the harbor changes for piers and other structures in the coastal harbors, we added a provision that said, in essence, what it does is it says the town's going to require you guys to pay for a third-party consultant to review what your consultant has done, and to verify that that's right. It's not always needed. We used it on Nordhaven for stormwater. Stormwater is a prime example and reason to do these. So it says the planning board at its sole discretion may require, at the applicant's expense, the review of any studies, plans, reports, or other materials submitted in connection with an application under this chapter by a qualified independent consultant or professional selected by the town. Such review shall be for the purpose of assisting the planning board in determining compliance with the requirements of this chapter and other applicable ordinances, regulations, and standards of the town of Camden. The consultant's findings shall be considered advisory in nature and shall be used by the planning board in its deliberations to the extent the board deems appropriate and to its satisfaction. So it allows you guys to have a third party. And it doesn't need to be an engineer, right? If there's wildlife habitat issue, you could say, we're not comfortable reviewing this. We're not wildlife biologists. We're not, scientists from that perspective. I appreciate what you're saying, consultant, but you're working for a client and we're trying to do this review. So I think we need a third-party reviewer, and that's all. And they would be on the hook for the cost. You don't have to ask for it always. And again, it's at your discretion. You might, it's just something that we don't have in the code that I think is important for you guys to have as a tool to make sure your reviews are done appropriately and meeting criteria.
Isn't there also a wildlife review, a third-party review? Maybe it wasn't the third-party review.
Yeah,
that.
That was because of the deer yard issue.
Right.
Yeah, there was a deer yard issue up there. And so they brought IFNW in on that one. The harbor changes, the pier changes, it allows you guys to have a wildlife biologist, a marine biologist, a whole host of just professionals that could review the standard and provide you with appropriate guidance. Any questions on that requirement? I don't think these are onerous, to be honest with you. And I think it enables you to do your job appropriately, and it enables the town and town staff to make sure we're doing things right and projects are being permitted and done right. I've been in this business for almost 30 years, and it is somewhat frustrating to me where we, like Shenley, myself, Clint, we are professionals. We have a job to do, and there are standards for a reason, and communities and the state have created regulations for a reason. And then when you're in town meeting form of government, it's like the public voted for these rules and these requirements. And if we can't do our job to make sure they're doing what they need to do, I feel like we're failing. And we want to do right. We want to do it right by applicants. We want to do right by the environment. We want to do right by the town and what the code says. So I think they're appropriate. Okay, next one is, and not the one I was referring to earlier about residential. This one is though residential. In the downtown B1 zoning district, which is all of the core of downtown, goes up the street a little bit, up Mechanic a little bit, up Washington Street, all the way to the Cape, including the Cape that's above. That's the one I was talking about earlier, by the way, above the condos where Brimstone Consulting was. That's downtown B1. And then B1 is everything else downtown, and then down Bayview a little bit. What's that? Sure, if you got the map up, Shenley can show the map a little bit. Which one's the B1? The green?
Oh, yeah, this is, I'm gonna zoom in. Yeah, it's all this green.
Right, that aqua or whatever color that is.
all this
Yeah, so that's all B1.
Downtown.
Downtown zoning. And so in the downtown zoning district, there's a code that prevents you from having residential at street level. Makes perfect sense, especially storefront downtowns. Like, could you imagine if all of our storefronts, someone was like, you know what, I can make more money doing an apartment at street level. And imagine if, next to, Camden Deli, there was an apartment at street level. It's really not good planning, and it's not right. We've got to keep our business core downtown. So we did do a change last year. The B1, the Montessori school, the school district owned it at the time, and they were in the process of trying to do housing there, multifamily apartments. That fell through. Everyone knows. Town took ownership and then has a lease with the Montessori school to run it. So we did change that. So we allowed, the code's a little wonky, but it is what it is. We changed that, and this is really strange. So if you're looking at this, what's in your packet, the section on B1 has these raised, there's a raised cross or raised, I don't know if you call it a cross, a raised star or an asterisk, a raised hashtag symbol. Those all mean certain things, and those are below the permitted uses. So there would be, our pages aren't numbered, but so you'll notice it says for single family, two family, multifamily, except no residential use and no use accessory to a residential use, including but not limited to parking and storage, except the home occupants, shall occur on a floor at street level. There's already an exemption for some of these, like this. The restriction on residential use on a floor at street level shall not apply to structures in the Chestnut Street Historic District. That's a totally appropriate use of like on Chestnut Street Historic District. You want people to be able to like adaptively reuse some of these properties that are zoned B1 that are historic, and give them an opportunity to use residential there. That's what that does. And then the asterisk is another one, and that says access to the use may be permitted from street level as long as the width of the overall area for such access does not exceed the minimum state or federal access requirements. So this is saying your use, because it says no use of residential use is allowed at street level. However, you can have a door to the road with like a hallway meeting the minimum requirements necessary that gets you to a set of stairs that takes you up to the residential apartment. And that's the use upstairs, but they're going to give you that little width hallway down on the first floor. It makes sense, right? So then what we did for the Montessori school and the school district, we created this hashtag, this raised hashtag. The restriction on residence use on the first floor, on the floor at street level shall not apply to, and if you're looking at it, it's red, it's strike through because I'm proposing to delete that now because the school district no longer owns the building. It said structures that are owned by a school administrative district. That's going away. And I'm proposing the restriction, changing that to the restriction on residential use on a floor at street level shall not apply to the adaptive reuse of a single-story structure that was constructed in or before 1900 and is still located on its original site and is outside a designated historic district. You may wonder what that is or which ones we're talking about. So Shenley put together a group of single-story structures in the downtown B1 district There's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 of them. Most of them were built after 1900, and some of them are in the historic district, but most of them built after 1900, except for 32 Main Street and the old 12 Tannery Lane, which has already been actually adaptively reused already and is outside of the historic district. And then we have this one outlier, which is the smokestack. I call it the smokestack building at the Knox Mill. It's the bottom picture. You see it there. It's a kind of I think it's granite, might be a granite block building where the smokestack is. The turnaround for 40 paper and the mill is right there. And then you've got this building that kind of sits off the street, maybe 30 feet. That building is really underutilized. It has industrial equipment in it. It does have some cell equipment in it because there's some cell towers upstairs up on the tower. But I have had multiple property owners, multiple people come in over the last, since I've been here almost 8 years, saying, we can't do anything with this building. It's like an awkward building. Is there, like, can we do residential? We got a plan to try to do some residential there. And normally I would say, you know, if this was up on the street, like right on the sidewalk, like downtown is here, like we are here, I would say it's really not down with going to residential at street level. But this one sits off the street like 30 feet. It's got a vegetated buffer in front of it. Multiple people have inquired about trying to do residential there. We need residential development. We need some housing. And I think this is one way to add a little bit of housing. I mean, it's not a lot, right? I don't know what they can get in there total. But we were just thinking the best way to do this, to facilitate something like this, is to do what I said, what I just read to you, and then create a new definition. And a definition would be adaptive reuse, is the process of converting a building from its original design purpose to a new use, emphasizing the preservation or rehabilitation of building features over extensive remodeling. Common examples include home to office, factory to apartment, and store to school conversions. And that definition kind of came from the American Planning Association, but that is like a adaptive reuse. That's exactly what adaptive reuse is. You got an old industrial building. It can't really be, it's outlived its purpose, why it was built, and adaptively reuse it into something that meets today's needs. And I would suggest that we try to move this one forward too. And if you want to include maintaining a vegetative screen or something, kind of keeping that, making sure it stays somewhat separate, we can come up with some language to do that, just to maintain that vegetative screen in there. I think this would go a long way. I didn't want it to apply to just a single family dwelling. So you'll see that the hashtag stays for 2-family and multifamily, but not for single family. What I don't think we really want, I mean, that's a pretty good sized building. I think it's like 16 or 1,900 square feet or maybe more. I think a single family there is really a disservice to the process of adaptively reusing. And I think requiring it to be at least a 2-family or multifamily is the way to go.
This is attached to the smokestack.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very good, particularly if we need housing. How do we stop it or keep it from being a short-term rental?
Yeah, so short-term rentals are not allowed on the first, those are residential units and those are on the first floor.
On the first floor?
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that there was provision
Yeah.
for that.
I mean, yeah. We do have to, there is a cleanup that we need to do. We failed to put in the code last year. It was discussed, we talked about it, and it showed up in one of our versions of the code. It just not got transferred. When you do codes like this, it's like, I mean, you can look at something. Shenley and I look at these things. I review things like 20 times, and I'm like, I see the same thing over and over and over. Can you look at it? And you're like,
Yep.
whoa, look at these. The spelling error.
Yep.
That's not right. It's just like, I don't know what happens. But on that one, there was a raised on the short-term rentals,
One, yeah.
on the first floor. So
I
that
don't
is
remember
something,
that,
that
yeah.
is something that we are adding to the code. That was a Scribner's error.
'Cause it was, yeah.
There's also some potentially environmental cleanup.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I've been in, I'm only saying that. because
Yeah.
I've been inside a couple times.
Yeah, no doubt. There's that, and there's also, I don't know how close the telephone equipment is, right? There is,
Lot going on.
there's a lot going on there. And if you've ever been up in a cell tower or in like, I've been up to like spires or church steeples that have cell equipment in them. I've been up in those. I mean, you go into those things and you're like, before you get in, it's like, like warning, just so you know, there's a lot of radiation in here, so that's up to the building owner and the applicants to manage all that. That's not our stuff, thankfully.
But, yeah.
But if you guys are okay with these amendments, I would love to schedule a hearing
Okay.
and we could spend more time on them if you want at that time, go through it. But it was really, I think these were pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and I think would go a long way to making sure we're protecting the environment, protecting property owners, protecting neighbors, and in this case, trying to add a little bit of housing downtown in a building that's underutilized.
Do we vote on scheduling that?
You
or
do.
Okay.
You do.
So
And
can,
can I just say that we've
Yeah.
got a little bit of awkward timing
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Is there anyone participating? Is that just you, Renee, one?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
so we need a motion.
We need a motion, but it's really about the date. And I'm
Okay.
saying this because we get in late February and March, we run into the budget committee, which takes over this building, this room on Thursdays.
So do we have
I
to
don't
set
like-
that date now?
Yeah, you do.
We do.
You have to
Okay.
set a date. I hate to say that, but we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're bumped up against the select board and getting things to them in time for their hearings. So I was looking at, Shenley, what were you on the
March
calendar?
4th,
Yeah, it's a
the
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
March 4th.
Okay.
And what we end up having to do, we've got to put this in the notice, we got to put this in the paper twice. Goes, I think it's 14 days and then 6 days before the hearing, it has to be published in the newspaper. So we're going to try to do that by the end of next week. It would be sent to the newspaper. I mean, I will say, sometimes we play this game and I don't like it. There's actually a bill in the legislature right now that I provided some comments on, testimony on, about no longer requiring public notice to be noticed in a newspaper. I know newspaper people are not happy about that bill, but it's been years and years and years to let towns and legislators have been advocating to try to get rid of that, just to do public notice on the town's website, posted at the post office, posted at the town, whatever. It is incredibly costly for towns to do these notices like we have to do them. I mean, I feel bad for the old newspapers, but I'm not sure it's even going to pass this year again in the legislature, because the newspapers, there are a big lobby still, and they come out in full force on something like this, because this is like their bread and butter. This is their advertisement, is where they make their money, and their public notice is where they make money. So I'm not sure what'll happen, but sometimes we end up running into this where it takes, and since we have a local newspaper that only gets published once a week, you really have to get your timing right to them, and you have to really count your days. So sometimes we end up having to send to the Kennebec Journal, because they publish daily. We end up sending notices to the Kennebec Journal, and they get published in the Kennebec Journal rather than in the Midcoast or the Midcoast Messenger. But so I'm hoping you guys can schedule this for March 4th,
Okay.
a Wednesday.
So I need a motion to bring 290, 5.5, 290.
You
Yeah,
could,
it's just fine.
you could say whatever we had just, to bring
Okay.
forward the proposed amendments as discussed today would be fine.
Okay, so we need a motion to bring forward the proposed amendments as discussed today. Okay, got a motion, a second? And all in favor?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Anything else, Shelly, did you want to say to them today? Any thoughts?
No,
No?
well,
Oh,
sidewalks. I
yes,
mean,
yes, sorry. Yes, thank you, Shelly.
There's,
Yeah.
I know you do. See how quick we did this? I knew you were, I wanted you here, though. So we have another meeting on February 19th. This is a pre-app meeting for Nordhaven. Nordhaven is a subdivision up on Belfast Road. They have a 10-unit. It was 10, 9 new, right? Plus the cabin that went away is being built new. They are in for an amendment to expand it, I think. How many more? Do you remember? 20 more?
yes, total of 28.
Total of 28 up in that subdivision. So they'll be in for a pre-app meeting for that on the 19th. There is a requirement to do a site visit, a site walk. And I have a little handout, if you can just take one and Peter, leave them at the ones that are extra. I just don't want you to have, I have tons of paper and I don't want to give people more paper than they need. There's a requirement to do a site walk, and this kind of goes over what site walks are all about. Subdivisions, though, you can't have more than a foot of snow on the ground for a site walk. So I don't know what it looks like over there right now, but it may be tough to do a site walk over there, and we're going to let them know. And it's not a waivable thing. If you look at the subdivision ordinance, it's not waivable.
We did the first one in the snow.
We did, but there wasn't a foot, remember? It was
I don't
close.
remember.
It was
I don't
close.
remember trudging through
It
the
was
snow.
close. I think it was 10 inches.
So it'll have to be, what, 14 days?
What's that?
So that if the meeting's on the 19th of February, it has to be scheduled within
Right.
14 days.
Right.
So
We'll just
Yeah.
play it by ear
Yeah.
at that point.
Within 14 days after.
the 19th.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's coming before you. And I would also tell you that the property across from Rennie's, there's that vacant house that's been sitting there and the parking lot out back. We're meeting with some designers tomorrow to turn that White House into 2 units and to add 2 triplexes out back. I think it was 2. Yeah, we don't know yet, but I think 2 triplexes out back. 2 triplexes.
Oh, try.
So 6. So that'd be 6 plus the 1 new addition in the front. So 7 new units there. And then we also, just so you know, we don't have anything in writing from them, but we have met with them. I would tell you if we have it, I would tell you, and people would be able to come and see it, but we don't have anything yet. The property across from Hannaford at Camden Road, Camden Street, and Route 1, that's green. What was her name? O'Keefe, the older woman that owned that forever. She was a character. I met her the first week I was here, and then she passed away like a month later. Amazing, neat older woman. But that's that vacant lot that sits there next to the dog park on one side for a 7-unit subdivision there, seven standalone attached dwellings there on that site. And you'll be seeing that. We already had a pre-application meeting with them, and you'll be seeing that. I know they're ready to go, so you'll be seeing that sooner than later. I think they want to start construction this spring or summer on that one. So that's coming. So that is like, what's that, 14, 15, 16 maybe? 16 new units in the relatively downtown core. It's pretty good. That's what we got. Peter, you're good.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Enjoy. Good luck with the toboggans.
Yes. I'm actually not racing.
I know. I hear you're the man with the green means go, red means stop.
Yeah,
Don't go.
you heard that.
I did.
Does that mean you're up there opening the chute?
No, that means
Down, right?
I'm the police.
You're the police. You're down saying whether you could go.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I make sure the toboggans are all, yeah. It's gonna be an interesting event. for
Yeah,
me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for doing that, Peter. Yep. I think we're good. You want to do a motion to nix it?
Yeah. Yeah, can we have a motion to close the meeting?
What's that? Yeah. Yeah, and you're here on the 19th for that other meeting, right? Good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Or we just.
All good. Thank you so much. I will work on getting